Alright, so I wanted to create a video to talk about drying peppers. So we have a food dehydrator. It's the Presto dehydrator, food dehydrator. We bought a while back, and I've been using it to dry peppers. It's a pretty good old dryer. It only has one temperature, and the only other kind of negative that it has is there's no on or off button, so you have to plug it in and unplug it whenever you want to use it. This little button here you would think would be a power button, but it's not, although it is pushed in because we tried to use it as one, but it's really just a light to say that it's on. It comes with 4 trays. Again, you can see I've been drying peppers because of all the pepper seeds that are in there. The 4 trays are stackable into each other so that they can be stored easily. They actually stack upside down, even makes it even shorter. But you have to stack them a certain way to make sure that the airflow gets put in. So if you put it upside down like this, it'll be way too close and it'll actually burn the bottom layer of peppers. So you want to make sure that you're stacking it up higher and that you alternate this way. And when you do that, and I've done that correctly, this will sit right on top, and now you've assembled your dehydrator. So pretty simple stuff. You just got to make sure that they're stacked pretty evenly. So we've got a bunch of peppers that we washed earlier. Now we need to do the cutting in half of these peppers. Depending on the peppers, you may not cut them in half. These are a little bit bulky, so we cut them in half and then put them face down on the trays. If you have peppers that are longer, cutting in half is really a pain. I'll usually just slice the ends off of them, and that allows air to get in. Usually if they're thinner like that, they dry quicker anyway. We've got a couple habaneros in here as well. These peppers will dry differently depending on the kind of peppers that you have. So the time is not always, even in peppers of the same variety, the larger ones will take a little bit longer than some of the small ones to dry. So you do have to keep checking it. There's no specific time, but it can be anywhere from a couple of hours to overnight in some cases to really dry some of them. So again, we've already washed these. I'm going to go ahead and start cutting them up. It is recommended that you use gloves. I don't use gloves because I'm just awesome, and I'll pay for that later. But I just wanted to kind of show you guys. Unfortunately, we don't have any real knives at the Homestead yet, so we've got plastic knives. So this is going to be really fun to try to cut these up with. But I'm going to start just slicing them in half. So you take one of these massive big boys right here and just cut it right down the middle. Just be careful not to get it in your eyes. Again, wear gloves if you're not used to peppers at all. The hotter the pepper, the more likely you are to get some burning, and also squirt some juices out. So you can see the inside. Some people will cut the placenta out and the seeds. I like to leave it in there because when I make these into pepper flakes, I want them to be have seeds in there. So although a lot of the seeds are still going to fall out. If you see it where it's got a large placenta like this, you can cut it a little bit just to get the air in there. But to be honest with you, I've never really had a problem, so I just stick it on there. And I also do take the ones that have the most open space and kind of put them to the outside, because it seems to be that on this one, the ones in the middle dry a little bit more than the ones on the outside. It's not always consistent, but just kind of a rule. And if there's some leftover stuff on the end here, I just try to cut that off. A little bit's not going to hurt anything. You're not going to notice it once you've ground it up into flakes anyway. It won't affect taste at all. So these peppers are Apocalypse Scorpion peppers. So they're pretty hot. Pretty hot little peppers. Now, I don't eat these peppers. I usually will just use them to spice something up like a large dish, or again, for pepper flakes, they're great. The problem is they're really hot. So if they're really hot, you only need, with pepper flakes, all you have to do is just take a few flakes and put it in something and it'll completely spice the whole thing up. So really the only advantage is there is a flavor difference, which I do like the flavor, but the advantage is for a couple of peppers, it can go a really long way. So you don't have to grow that many peppers and you'll have seemingly a lifetime of pepper flakes. This butter knife is not the greatest knife in the world to cut with, but it's actually not doing too bad. That serrated edge. I'll have to get the video sponsored by whoever creates these. One thing I do love about these peppers is they're just so beautiful. They're really fun to grow as well. I like growing them. The plants are kind of low maintenance. It just takes forever. These varieties take anywhere from 120 to 150 days to maturity, and sometimes it can take longer than that. Just a little spot, it's fine. That's why I'm enjoying the weather in our areas. Staying pretty warm. It was 75 degrees the other day, and it's in mid-November. So it's good for peppers because that means that they won't freeze and they can keep growing longer. As you can see, my first tray is done. You can space them together a little bit closer if you need to, but that's generally just want to make sure that there's enough space between them so that they'll dry out a little more evenly. If you have more, there's nothing wrong with putting them in there pretty tight. It just some of them may dry quicker than others. So just try to evenly space them in there, and then stack more on top. Show you this. Just take this guy here, stack it on top, and then just keep cutting. One other thing is I am doing this in my cellar right now. You do not want to do this in your main living space. If you're okay with a little bit of spice, that's one thing. You'll smell it. It won't necessarily be burning your face off. It's not really a pepper spray when these things dry, but it does create a little bit of I'm not sure how to describe it, but a little bit of spice in the air when you're drying this. So you do want it to either do this outside if you can, or in a garage, or in your cellar. That's where you want to make sure you put your dryer. Same thing as well when we get to the step of chopping it up. That is a much bigger issue. If you do that indoors, you're going to pepper spray your house, and you're not going to like it. Your animals aren't going to like it, and most importantly, your wife's not going to like it. So the other thing you want to do when you're doing this is just look inside, make sure that there's no rotten spots or anything. We have plenty of peppers, more than we'll ever need, so I just try to be fairly picky with them. If there's any kind of black spots or anything in there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, but I just try to make sure that they're fairly clean peppers on the inside. Bugs can get in these and plant eggs and lay eggs, I should say. Any kind of mold as well. Usually if they're sealed off, you'll see the mold on the outside first before you'll see it on the inside. But if there are holes that worms or something has put a hole in one of these, you may get some mold on the inside before you even see it on the outside. And that can happen on the plant, it can happen outside. See, like this one, it's got some black on the inside. It looks like something may have dug a hole up here, so I'm just going to toss that guy out. You can smell them. They definitely smell hot. And my fingers are going to be hot after this as well. But we'll survive. Hopefully. Just do not touch your face or any other part of your body before you wash your hands thoroughly. Some people actually, it burns their hands. Mine has never burned my hands no matter what. I've got some Carolina Reapers as well, and it's never burned my hands when I get the juice on my hands. Now, there are other places that you touch that it does burn, but on my hands itself, it's never really burned. All right, so that's tray 2 is done. So one thing I just noticed, the ones with the handles have to go on the bottom. The one that does not have a handle has to be upright. So that's another little thing to think about. You'll struggle. So I tried to put this one on here, and even though it's the right way up, it doesn't fit. So there is actually a space or a specific fit to it. That if it's got handles, it fits on there. If it does not have handles, it goes upright. So just something to keep in mind. And even though I'm not wearing gloves, which you should do, I still try not to put my hands inside the pepper as much as possible, because that is where all the heat is. Most of the heat's here in this placenta. You know, a common thing is people say that the seeds have the heat, and they do have some heat because they're covered in the capsaicin. But most of the capsaicin is concentrated here, and it gets out on these edges. So if you want to eat a pepper that's not going to be as hot, just eat the edges, leave the seeds. If you want the whole thing, you want some real heat, eat that part. One other thing I noticed when growing these super hot peppers is there are the traditional views of these peppers where they have this little tail that kind of comes off the end, especially the super hots. Carolina Reapers have it, and several other ones. But this pepper, the Apocalypse Scorpion, really didn't have a ton of that on the ones that I grew. I noticed when I bought them that they really all kind of look like ghost peppers, to be honest. They don't look a whole lot different. There's just a little bit more jaggedness at the bottom. But I grew some ghost peppers earlier in the year, and they looked very similar, so I had a hard time figuring out which one was which because I wasn't very good at labeling them, thinking that they would just all look really different. But so some of these may actually be ghost peppers, but the majority of them I think are Apocalypse Scorpion peppers. Either way, they're hot. That's a nice red one. And this one I'm going to keep. I'm actually going to eat this one later, so I may record it. We'll see. Now, a couple of habaneros that we have. We had a lot of habaneros earlier in the year. They kind of stopped producing later. There's still some on there. And we'll have to do a video to show you guys how our beds are set up today. Again, I'm at the homestead today, but we actually have another house that is on a very small property, but we tried to make the best of it. It's got some darkness in the seeds a little bit now. But we'll make a video to show you what we have currently versus what we're working with now out here on the homestead. So as you can see, I have stacked trays of peppers. Now I just have to plug this in, turn it on, and let it sit for several hours. Come back, check it again, and I'll follow up then. Thanks. Alright, so it looks like we're getting a little bit drier here, so let me go ahead and unplug this. And let's see what we've got here. So if you look closely, it's pretty wrinkled and very dry, as you can see. Now what I'll do on these, like right here there's a soft spot, so I will feel for those and see if there's any that still need a little bit more time to dry. You don't have to dry them out to that extent. It just depends on how much you really want them to be dried before you turn them into flakes. But looking at this habanero here, is still very soft, but a few of these are ripe for the picking, like the first one that we got. So you can pull these trays off and look. Generally the ones towards the bottom are a little bit more dry than the ones towards the top, but these all feel pretty good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these Ziploc bags and I'm just going to put them in here and kind of crush them in the bag a little bit, and then that way they'll be, I can get them all in probably one bag, I'm sure, to be ground up later. Alright, let's start looking for some good ones here. It's a pretty good shot of all the peppers kind of dried out. I'll start from the bottom. That's good. That's good. Since I only have a couple habaneros, I'm just going to throw them in the same bag. They're not going to make that much of a difference. And of course we have 3 left. And I'm still going to dry them though, so I'm going to put them on the bottom rack here and then close this up. Hopefully they'll dry fast. It's probably a waste of electricity, but why not? I'm just going to stick this on top. Plug this guy back in. It's like a nice big bag of peppers, and my favorite part comes next. I'm going to crush them up. Sometimes you got to put a little crack in the bag here. Just be careful that you don't pepper spray yourself. And you don't have to get them down. You really don't even have to do this. You can throw them straight in the grinder. I just kind of like to mix them up a little bit. Seal back up some more. You can smell it though. Boy, that's hot. Because they got a nice little bunch of pepper flakes. Now we're going to grind this up. I don't have my grinder here, but basically just any kind of food processor. But you just want to kind of get it processed in, and that's how you dry peppers. So